Self-love is not selfish, it's foundational. This truth, often misunderstood, carries the weight of what it means to be fully human, to show up for ourselves and others in a way that is wholehearted and honest. We live in a culture that sometimes glorifies self-sacrifice, hustle, and the idea that putting others first is the highest form of love. But what if real love, sustainable, generous, and meaningful, starts from within? To love yourself is not to place yourself above others. It is not about entitlement, arrogance, or pushing people aside to meet your own needs. It is about recognizing that you are a human being worthy of care, attention, and kindness, especially from yourself. When you truly love yourself, you're not demanding the world revolve around you. You're simply honoring your own space in it. You become someone who can love without losing themselves, who can give without resentment, and who can live without constant exhaustion from trying to be everything to everyone. Loving yourself first means being grounded in your own worth. It's a quiet, powerful decision to stop abandoning yourself in moments of fear or failure. It's refusing to treat yourself as a problem to be fixed. It's embracing the messy, the imperfect, the awkward parts of who you are and saying, even here, I am enough. That's not easy. It takes unlearning years of criticism, of internalized messages that told us we had to earn love through achievement, through pleasing, through shrinking ourselves to fit someone else's idea of good. But love, real love, doesn't work that way. You don't have to reach some imaginary standard to deserve love. And self-love is not about waiting until you have it all together to begin treating yourself well. It's about practicing kindness, especially in the moments you feel least worthy of it. It's about catching yourself when that inner voice gets cruel and choosing over and over again to speak to yourself with the same compassion you offer to your closest friend. That kind of love is not weakness, it's strength. It's what allows you to set boundaries without guilt. It's what lets you say no when something violates your values or yes when it's time to take a risk for your own growth. It teaches you to listen to your body, your intuition, your limits. When you love yourself first, you stop chasing validation from people who can't see your worth because you already know it. And here's the truth no one talks about enough. You cannot give what you don't have. You cannot love others in a deep, sustainable way if you are constantly betraying yourself to do it. You cannot keep showing up with grace and patience if you are depleted and disconnected from your own needs. Self-love is the anchor. It's the oxygen mask you put on before helping others, not because you are just as important. Loving yourself also means taking responsibility for your life. Not in the sense of blaming yourself for every hardship, but in claiming your power to choose how you respond to it. It's admitting when you've been unkind to yourself, when you've ignored your truth, when you've tolerated too little for too long. And it's forgiving yourself, not because you're perfect, but because you're human. I think the journey of self-love is not linear. Some days, you'll get it right, you'll speak kindly to yourself. You'll rest when you're tired. You'll honor your emotions without judging them. Other days, you'll fall back into old patterns, people-pleasing, negative self-talk, overextending. That's part of it too. Self-love isn't a final destination. It's a daily practice. And the more you return to it, the more natural it becomes. Like a muscle, it gets stronger with use. When you start to love yourself first, something shifts. Your relationships change. You no longer cling to people who don't respect your worth. You stop bending over backwards to earn approval. You find peace in solitude because your own company is no longer a punishment, it becomes a place of restoration. You give more freely because your giving no longer comes from a place of lack or fear, but from a heart that is already full. The world that benefits from your doubt, your constant striving, your insecurity, your fear. Loving yourself first is a radical act. It challenges every message that says you're not enough. It dares to believe that you matter, not for what you do, but for who you are. And when you live from that place, you invite others to do the same. You model what it looks like to be both strong and tender, confident and humble, grounded and open-hearted. So no, self-love is not selfish. It is the seed from which everything good can grow. When you love yourself first, you don't take love away from others. You expand the capacity of what love can be. You become someone who shows up with presence, with resilience, with integrity. And that kind of love, rooted deep within, is the kind the world needs more of. Worthiness is not earned, it's inherent. This truth can be hard to accept in a world that constantly tells us otherwise. From the time we are young, we're taught to believe that worth comes from performance, appearance, productivity, or popularity. We grow up chasing gold stars, approval, titles, and external validation, as if our value hinges on how impressive we can be to someone else. But deep down, in the quiet spaces of our lives, something aches when we tie our worth to what we do instead of who we are. At the core of being human is the need to feel seen, known, and loved, not for our achievements, but for our essence. Worthiness is not something you unlock after hitting a milestone or reaching perfection. It doesn't live in your resume, your relationship status, or your bank account. It lives in your very existence. You are worthy simply because you are here. You are enough before you do anything to prove it. The lie that worth is earned can trap us in a lifelong cycle of striving. We hustle to prove we belong, to feel good enough, to quiet the voice that says, you haven't done enough yet. But no amount of external success will ever satisfy a hunger for worth that hasn't been answered from within, because when your sense of value is conditional, it's always fragile. It can be taken away with a failure, a rejection, or a moment of vulnerability. True worth isn't conditional. It's solid, unshakable, and untouched by circumstance. When you begin to accept that you are inherently worthy, something powerful happens. You stop asking the world to constantly affirm you. You stop bending yourself into shapes to fit in. You stop performing and start being. You begin to live more freely because your identity no longer depends on earning love or proving yourself. You're able to move through the world with integrity because your choices come from alignment, not desperation. It doesn't mean you stop growing or striving for excellence. In fact, knowing your worth allows you to grow from a place of strength, not fear. You can challenge yourself without shame. You can pursue dreams without tying your identity to the outcome. You can fall short without collapsing into self-loathing. Because worthiness doesn't vanish when things get hard. It stays. It holds you steady through the ups and downs. It reminds you that your value is not on trial. There will always be moments when you doubt your worth. That's part of being human. We all carry wounds. Messages we absorbed somewhere along the way that told us we had to earn love by being good, quiet, helpful, attractive, successful. Those messages go deep, and they show up in subtle ways. The need to overachieve, the fear of failure, the inability to rest, the craving for constant approval. But the work of healing is learning to notice those patterns and gently replace them with a deeper truth, that you are already enough. Accepting your inherent worth also changes how you treat others. When you know that your value isn't something to compete over, you stop measuring yourself against everyone else. You begin to celebrate people instead of compare. You extend grace more easily because you're no longer judging yourself so harshly. Worthiness becomes a shared human experience, not a prize to be won. It becomes the foundation for empathy, connection, and belonging. This kind of shift doesn't happen overnight. It takes practice. It takes being willing to sit with your imperfections and still choose to believe you are lovable. It takes rewriting the inner narrative that says you have to earn rest, joy, or affection. It takes choosing to stay with yourself when you mess up instead of abandoning who you are. And it takes surrounding yourself with people who reflect this truth back to you, especially on the days you forget. In a culture that profits from your insecurity, believing in your inherent worth is a rebellious act. It says you are not a project to be fixed or a product to be sold. You are a person with value that cannot be increased or decreased based on how you perform. This belief doesn't make you arrogant, it makes you grounded. It doesn't make you passive, it makes you whole. So if you've been running, striving, exhausting yourself, trying to earn a sense of worth, maybe it's time to pause. Maybe it's time to come home to yourself and remember that you were never unworthy to begin with. The moment you were born, you were enough. You still are. Even with your flaws, your doubts, your history, your healing, you are not a problem to solve. You are a life to honor. Worthiness is not a finish line. It's the soil you were planted in. You don't have to do anything to deserve it. You just have to stop digging it up. Let it hold you. Let it nourish you. Let it remind you again and again that being human is enough. You are worthy. Always have been, always will be. Shame thrives in silence. Self-love speaks truth. These words capture a quiet but powerful truth about human experience. Shame, unlike guilt, isn't about something we did. It's about who we believe we are. It whispers, "You're not enough. You're broken," or "If people really knew you, they'd leave." And the more we keep those feelings hidden, the stronger they become. Silence is the oxygen shame needs to survive. But when we break that silence with honesty, compassion, and self-love, we start to loosen its grip. Shame is deeply isolating. It convinces us that we are alone in our struggles, that we are uniquely flawed, and that no one could possibly understand or accept us if they saw the truth. So we hide. We wear masks. We try to be perfect, to people please, to blend in. We bury our pain behind accomplishments or smiles. But the more we do that, the more disconnected we become, not just from others, but from ourselves. Silence doesn't just hide shame, it reinforces it. The things we refuse to say out loud start to feel more dangerous, more shameful, and more true. We internalize the idea that there's something wrong with us, that our pain is a sign of weakness, and that being vulnerable is too risky. And yet, vulnerability is exactly what we need to heal. It's the act of saying, "Here I am, messy, scared, imperfect, and still worthy of love." That kind of truth-telling doesn't erase shame overnight, but it strips it of its power. Self-love is the voice that speaks when shame goes quiet. It doesn't mean we ignore our mistakes or pretend everything is fine. Self-love means choosing to respond to our pain with curiosity instead of judgment, with kindness instead of cruelty. It means holding our stories not as evidence that we're unlovable, but as proof that we're human. When we meet ourselves with compassion, we begin to tell the truth about who we are and what we've been through. That truth, shared safely and bravely, becomes a bridge to healing. Speaking our truth doesn't always mean shouting it from the rooftops. Sometimes it begins in the smallest moments, in admitting to ourselves that we're struggling, in reaching out to a trusted friend, in journaling what we've never dared to say aloud. Truth-telling is not about dramatic confessions. It's about reclaiming our own narrative and giving ourselves permission to be seen, even if just by one person, even if just by ourselves. Self-love allows us to be honest without fear of abandonment. It reminds us that we don't have to earn belonging by hiding the parts of ourselves that feel unlovable. In fact, those are often the exact parts that need our attention most. When we bring them into the light, we begin to rewrite the story shame tried to tell. We move from "I am bad" to "I am hurting." From "no one can ever know this" to "this is hard, but I'm not alone." That shift can change everything. There's deep courage in choosing to be seen. It takes strength to say, "This is me," especially when you've been taught that you must be perfect to be loved. But perfection is a myth. No one has it all together. Everyone carries wounds. Everyone has a story they're afraid to tell. And when we start telling ours, we often discover that others have been waiting to do the same. Shame isolates, but truth connects. It builds bridges instead of walls. It lets us find our people. the ones who see us not in spite of our struggles, but because of them. The more we speak our truth, the less shame has room to grow. It starts to lose its grip. We realize that we're not alone, that we're not broken, that our experiences, while painful, are part of being alive. And in those moments, self-love becomes more than a concept, it becomes a practice. We learn to hold space for our own story, to speak truth to ourselves gently without trying to rewrite or erase the past. We learn to trust that being honest is not dangerous, but liberating. Healing from shame takes time. There will be days when the silence feels safer, when vulnerability feels too risky. That's okay. Self-love isn't loud. It's not performative. Sometimes it's just the quiet voice that says, "You're doing your best," or "It's okay to feel this way." Sometimes it's the hand on your own heart, the breath you take before telling the truth. It's the choice to show up for yourself, even when the world tells you to hide. In the end, the opposite of shame isn't confidence, it's connection. And connection starts with honesty. When we speak the truth of who we are, when we meet ourselves with love instead of judgment, we create space for real healing. We stop letting shame define us. We start telling new stories, stories that are messy, brave, and honest. Stories where self-love speaks louder than fear. And in doing so, we give others permission to do the same. Because shame may thrive in silence, but it cannot survive truth. And when truth is spoken with love, it becomes the most powerful medicine we have. Vulnerability is a brave act of self-respect. It is not weakness, though it is often misunderstood as such. To be vulnerable is to open yourself to uncertainty, to risk, to emotional exposure, and to do so not because it is easy, but because it is honest. It takes immense courage to show up as your full self in a world that often rewards armor, pretense, and emotional distance. But when you choose vulnerability, you are telling yourself and the world, "I believe I am worth being seen." That is not just brave, it is an act of profound respect for who you are. We live in a culture that teaches us to value strength, control, and invulnerability. From a young age, we learn to hide our fears, our grief, our insecurities. We are praised for composure, for keeping it together, for staying quiet when something hurts. Vulnerability gets labeled as oversharing, weakness, or attention-seeking. But the truth is, hiding is easy. Pretending is safe. Vulnerability is what requires real strength. It is the willingness to be real, to say, "This is hard," or "I need help," or "I don't know." Those moments strip away the masks and invite authenticity, which is the soil where connection and healing grow. Being vulnerable is not about spilling your deepest emotions to everyone. It is not about exposure for the sake of drama. It is about intentional, courageous honesty with yourself and with those who've earned your trust. It's about removing the emotional armor that keeps you safe but disconnected. You may feel exposed when you speak your truth, but you are also giving yourself the freedom to stop pretending. You stop wasting energy performing or pleasing. Instead, you begin to live in alignment with who you really are. Self-respect is about treating yourself as someone worthy of truth, care, and dignity. Vulnerability aligns with that. When you choose vulnerability, you stop hiding your pain, your joy, your fears, or your dreams in order to be accepted. You stop editing yourself to fit someone else's expectations. You say, "This is me," fully. And in doing so, you honor your own story. You give yourself permission to be human. That is not weakness. It's the deepest form of self-respect there is. The truth is, all of us are vulnerable, whether we acknowledge it or not. Life itself is uncertain. We are constantly exposed to the unknown, the uncontrollable. We grieve, we fall in love, we take chances, we fail, we hope. Vulnerability is not something you can avoid. It's something you can either embrace or deny. When you deny it, you might feel more in control, but you also risk feeling numb. When you embrace it, you open yourself to the full depth of what it means to be alive. Relationships thrive on vulnerability. Whether in friendships, family, or romantic connections, depth is created when people are willing to be seen. Not just their achievements or strengths, but their doubts, their mistakes, their fears. When you let someone see you in your rawness, you invite them to do the same. You create safety, not by being perfect, but by being real. That's how trust is built. That's how love deepens. Vulnerability is the gateway to intimacy, and it begins with respecting yourself enough to be honest. Of course, being vulnerable doesn't guarantee that others will respond with kindness. It's possible that you'll be met with judgment, misunderstanding, or rejection. That's part of the risk. But the reward is that you will never have to wonder whether you were loved for who you truly are or just for the version of you that others find more comfortable. Vulnerability filters out what is false and makes room for what is genuine. You may lose some connections along the way, but the ones that remain will be deeper, truer, and more sustaining. Self-respect through vulnerability also means not abandoning yourself when things get hard. It means staying with yourself emotionally rather than shutting down, numbing out, or pretending nothing is wrong. It means allowing your feelings to exist without shame. It means crying when you need to cry, asking for help when you're overwhelmed, admitting fear without pretending to be fearless. It is choosing to honor your own emotional experience, not hide from it. There's power in saying, I don't have it all figured out. There's freedom in saying, this hurt me, or I want more than this. There's dignity in being able to look in the mirror and say, I'm struggling, but I'm still worthy. These moments are not evidence of failure. They are signs of being alive and open to growth. Vulnerability does not take away your strength. It reveals it. It does not diminish your worth. It affirms it. When you choose to live vulnerably, you reclaim your right to be fully human. You reject the lie that your value is based on how perfect or polished you appear. You embrace the truth that being seen, flaws and all, is the most powerful thing you can offer the world and yourself. You begin to trust that you can handle the discomfort of being real, and that on the other side of that discomfort is connection, authenticity, and peace. Vulnerability is not something to fear. It's something to respect because it's how you honor your truth. And when you live in your truth, you live in your power. Not the kind of power that controls or impresses, but the kind of power that frees you. Perfection is the enemy of connection. This statement challenges a deeply ingrained belief many of us carry, that to be loved, accepted, or valued, we must present an image of flawless perfection. From the polished social media profiles to the perfectly curated public personas, we are constantly told that perfection is the ideal. But in striving for perfection, we often find ourselves more isolated, more disconnected from others and from ourselves. The pursuit of perfection is at its core a barrier to the kind of deep, authentic connection we truly need. The idea that perfection is necessary for connection comes from a place of fear of being rejected, judged, or not measuring up. When we believe we must be perfect to belong, we hide the parts of ourselves that feel vulnerable, awkward, or messy. We present only our best selves, our successes, our polished appearances, our most curated thoughts, and we keep the rest hidden away. But in doing so, we rob ourselves and others of the chance to connect on a real human level. True connection doesn't happen when we present a version of ourselves that's flawless and untouchable. It happens when we show up as we are, imperfect and raw. Perfectionism keeps us isolated. It makes us afraid to share our true selves because we're constantly measuring ourselves against an unattainable standard. We compare our behind-the-scenes struggles to the highlight reels of others, and we feel inadequate. We feel like we're not enough. But what if the real magic of connection lies in the imperfect, messy, unfiltered parts of our lives? What if it's in our struggles, our vulnerabilities, our flaws, that we find common ground with others? When we share our imperfections, we invite others to do the same. We create a space where authenticity can thrive. It's in the moments when we let our guard down, admit our mistakes, or talk about our challenges that we start to truly connect with others. Perfectionism, on the other hand, creates distance. It says, I need to be perfect to be loved. But love doesn't require perfection. Love requires honesty, openness, and vulnerability. It's important to remember that perfection is subjective. What one person considers perfect, another may see as flawed. Perfection is an illusion that exists only in our minds, based on societal standards, comparisons, or our own unrealistic expectations. The more we chase it, the more we miss out on the richness of real human connection. People connect not over perfection, but over shared experiences, empathy, and understanding. When we let go of the need to be perfect, we allow space for others to step in and show us their true selves. And that's where deep connection happens. Perfectionism also feeds into the fear of being judged. We are afraid that if people see our flaws, they won't love us or accept us. We think we need to meet others' expectations to be worthy of their attention or affection. But this kind of thinking creates a relationship built on performance, not genuine connection. If we are constantly worried about meeting someone else's standards, we are never truly free to be ourselves. We are performing, not living. Connection cannot happen in this kind of environment because it's based on a facade, not on authenticity. When we let go of perfection, we allow for real, messy, beautiful human experiences to unfold. We connect over shared vulnerability, over the fact that we've all felt lost, unsure, or imperfect at some point in our lives. We connect over our humanity, not our perfection. When we show up as we are, we give others permission to do the same. And in that space of authenticity, relationships deepen and real bonds form. The most meaningful connections often come from the moments of imperfection. Think of the times when you felt truly seen and understood. When someone opened up to you about their struggles, their flaws, or their insecurities, how did you respond? Chances are, you didn't think any less of them. In fact, their vulnerability probably drew you closer to them. It's in the moments when we drop the mask of perfection that we can truly meet each other on a deeper level. Perfectionism also drains us. It's exhausting to try to maintain an image of perfection, to constantly worry about how we're being perceived, to judge ourselves harshly for every little mistake. When we're caught in the cycle of perfection, we miss out on the joy of simply being. We're too focused on what we need to fix, on how we can be better, to fully embrace the present moment or appreciate the beauty of life as it is. This constant striving for perfection takes us away from the very thing we seek: connection. We become so focused on measuring up that we forget to simply show up. The antidote to perfectionism is self-acceptance. It's the understanding that we don't have to be perfect to be worthy of love, friendship, and connection. We just have to be real. When we accept ourselves, flaws, mistakes, and all, we give ourselves permission to be human. And when we allow others to do the same, we create the conditions for connection to flourish. Perfection is a barrier, but imperfection is a bridge. When we accept that we are not perfect, we open ourselves to deeper, more meaningful relationships. We free ourselves from the exhausting pursuit of an unattainable ideal and embrace the beauty of being human. And in that acceptance, we find the true connections that nourish us and allow us to grow together. Boundaries are the language of self-love. They are not walls built to keep others out, but rather clear markers that communicate what we need to feel safe, respected, and valued. Establishing and maintaining boundaries is an essential act of self-respect because they define how we wish to be treated and ensure that our needs are met. Without boundaries, we risk losing ourselves in the demands, expectations, and emotions of others. Boundaries are an expression of our self-worth. They say, I am worthy of respect, and my needs matter. At its core, a boundary is a statement of self-respect. It's a way of telling yourself that you deserve to take up space, to honor your feelings, and to protect your time and energy. Boundaries are not selfish, as society sometimes portrays them. In fact, they are the opposite. They are deeply rooted in self-love. They allow you to show up in your relationships with integrity and honesty. When you set clear boundaries, you are saying, I love myself enough to protect my peace. This is not a rejection of others, but rather an affirmation that your emotional and physical well-being matters. The difficulty in setting boundaries often comes from the fear of conflict or rejection. We may worry that if we say no, if we draw a line in the sand, others will be upset, disappointed, or angry. But when we let fear guide our decisions, we sacrifice our needs and desires for the sake of others. In these moments, we place their comfort over our own. Yet true connection cannot exist without mutual respect. By failing to set boundaries, we allow others to define our limits, and in doing so, we lose ourselves. Self-love means protecting your own energy, and that requires speaking up, even when it feels uncomfortable. Boundaries help us maintain a healthy balance in our relationships. Without them, we can become overwhelmed, overextended, and resentful. When we don't express our needs, others may unknowingly take advantage of our time, energy, or emotional resources. Healthy boundaries, however, prevent this from happening. They allow us to cultivate relationships that are built on respect, trust, and understanding. Setting a boundary is an act of teaching others how to treat you, and it's a way to protect yourself from the harmful effects of overgiving or people-pleasing. Saying no is often the hardest part of setting boundaries. Many of us have been conditioned to believe that saying no is rude or unkind. We are taught to be accommodating, to always say yes in order to keep the peace or to gain approval. But by constantly saying yes when we mean no, we neglect our own needs. We drain ourselves emotionally, physically, and mentally. Saying no isn't about rejecting others. It's about honoring our limits. It's about recognizing that we have the right to decline requests or invitations that do not align with our values or that would deplete us. When we start saying no, it is a sign of self-love and self-respect. It's a way of honoring our time, our energy, and our well-being. It's an act of standing up for ourselves and refusing to let others overstep our personal boundaries. No one has the right to demand that we sacrifice ourselves for their comfort or happiness. Saying no can be difficult, but it's essential for maintaining our mental and emotional health. In fact, it can be one of the most empowering things we do. Boundaries also extend to our emotional well-being. When we allow others to overstep our emotional limits, we expose ourselves to hurt, manipulation, or toxicity. Setting emotional boundaries is an important act of self-care because it enables us to protect our hearts and minds from harmful influences. It involves recognizing when someone is treating us unfairly or disrespectfully and deciding not to tolerate it. It's not about controlling others. It's about taking responsibility for our own emotional health. Many of us are taught to be overly accommodating and to suppress our own feelings to avoid conflict, but this leads to emotional burnout and resentment. When we set emotional boundaries, we take ownership of our feelings and acknowledge that it is not our responsibility to manage others' emotions. We are allowed to feel what we feel without guilt or shame. We don't have to absorb the negativity of others or allow their moods to dictate our own. Emotional boundaries help us stay grounded in our truth and protect us from becoming overwhelmed by others' emotional demands. Another vital aspect of boundaries is knowing when to let go of relationships that no longer serve us. Sometimes, even the people we care about can overstep our boundaries. In these situations, it's crucial to honor ourselves by recognizing when a relationship is toxic, draining, or unbalanced. Boundaries help us understand when it's time to distance ourselves from individuals who do not respect our limits, no matter how much we love them. Letting go can be one of the hardest things to do, but it's an act of deep self-love. It's about choosing ourselves, even if it means stepping away from people who do not treat us with the respect we deserve. Creating boundaries also requires us to be clear about what we need. Many of us struggle with identifying our own needs, especially if we've been conditioned to prioritize others' needs over our own. But in order to set healthy boundaries, we must first understand ourselves, our feelings, our limits, our desires. This requires self-awareness and reflection. When we take the time to understand our own needs, we can communicate them more clearly to others, creating healthier, more supportive relationships. Boundaries are the language of self-love because they communicate to the world that you respect yourself enough to take care of your needs. They protect your energy, preserve your peace, and safeguard your emotional well-being. They enable you to cultivate relationships that are healthy, respectful, and fulfilling. By setting and maintaining boundaries, you honor your own worth and teach others to do the same. It's not selfish to set boundaries. It's an act of self-respect and an essential part of living a life that is aligned with your values and well-being. You can't hate yourself into growth. This truth is both liberating and challenging. In a world that often promotes self-criticism as a means of self-improvement, this idea goes against the grain. We are often taught that in order to change, we need to push ourselves harder, criticize our weaknesses, and punish ourselves for our mistakes. But the reality is that growth doesn't happen from a place of self-loathing. True growth comes from self-compassion, patience, and the willingness to embrace ourselves, flaws and all. When we approach growth from a place of hatred or disdain for ourselves, we are only reinforcing the belief that we are not worthy of love or success unless we meet certain standards. This mindset can lead to a cycle of shame and negative self-talk, where we continuously tell ourselves that we're not enough, that we must be better, that we must work harder. While this may seem motivating on the surface, it actually stifles our potential. It makes us afraid to fail, afraid to take risks, and ultimately it keeps us stuck in a state of perpetual dissatisfaction. Self-hatred is an internal prison. It convinces us that we are broken, that we are unworthy of success or happiness unless we are perfect. But perfection is a myth. There is no such thing as a perfect person, and there is no such thing as perfect growth. Growth is messy. It's filled with setbacks, mistakes, and moments of doubt. But it is also filled with learning, self-discovery, and healing. When we approach growth with self-compassion, we create the space for all of it: the mistakes, the missteps, the victories, and the lessons. We allow ourselves to be imperfect, and in doing so, we open ourselves up to real progress. The belief that we need to hate ourselves in order to grow is rooted in a misunderstanding of what growth truly is. Growth is not about forcing yourself to fit into a mold or punishing yourself for not measuring up. It's about expanding into who you are meant to be, learning how to adapt, evolve, and become more aligned with your true self. This requires acceptance of where you are right now, in this very moment, with all your flaws, quirks, and imperfections. Only from a place of acceptance can real transformation begin. When we are constantly critical of ourselves, we undermine our own ability to see the progress we've made. Self-criticism clouds our perspective and makes us focus on what's wrong rather than what's right. It's easy to get caught in the cycle of constantly trying to fix ourselves, never feeling like we're enough. But this mindset creates a barrier to growth. It prevents us from seeing the small victories, the improvements, and the strides forward. When we embrace ourselves with love and understanding, we begin to recognize our progress and celebrate even the smallest steps. Self-love is a catalyst for growth. It is the soil in which our potential can take root and flourish. When we approach ourselves with kindness and compassion, we are more likely to take risks, try new things, and step outside our comfort zones. Self-love empowers us to face our challenges with resilience, to view setbacks as opportunities for growth rather than as failures. It allows us to cultivate a mindset that is open to learning and evolution. Growth becomes a journey of discovery, not a destination we must constantly strive for. Hating ourselves can also lead to burnout and exhaustion. When we operate from a place of self-criticism, we push ourselves beyond our limits, believing that if we just work harder or be tougher, we will eventually succeed. But this kind of mentality is not sustainable. It depletes us. It causes us to lose touch with our needs, our emotions, and our well-being. True growth requires balance, rest, and time to reflect. It requires listening to ourselves, honoring our boundaries, and allowing ourselves the grace to take breaks when needed. The road to growth is not linear. It's not a straight path with clear markers of success. It is a winding, unpredictable journey filled with ups and downs. If we approach this journey with self-hatred, we will see every dip, every obstacle as a sign of failure. But if we approach it with self-love, we will understand that these moments are part of the process. They are not indicators that we are not good enough. They are simply part of being human. Growth involves trial and error, setbacks and comebacks. It is only through loving and accepting ourselves through each phase that we can continue moving forward. Self-compassion allows us to be more patient with ourselves. When we love ourselves, we stop expecting perfection and start embracing progress. Instead of berating ourselves for not reaching a goal on time or for making mistakes along the way, we offer ourselves kindness and encouragement. We understand that setbacks are not signs of failure, but opportunities to learn and grow. This shift in mindset opens the door for us to move forward with greater clarity, confidence, and resilience. It's also important to understand that growth is a lifelong process. It doesn't happen overnight. It's a journey that requires continuous effort, but also continuous kindness toward ourselves. If we are constantly focused on what we need to fix or improve, we miss the beauty of the journey itself. Growth isn't just about achieving goals. It's about becoming the person we are meant to be along the way. It's about developing the strength to embrace who we are, to learn from our mistakes, and to celebrate the process, not just the outcome. You can't hate yourself into growth because hatred holds us back. It keeps us stuck in a cycle of shame, self-doubt, and fear. But self-love propels us forward. It is the force that allows us to take risks, to be kind to ourselves in our struggles, and to accept ourselves as we are. When we love ourselves, we create the conditions for growth. Conditions that nurture our potential, encourage progress, and ultimately allow us to become the best versions of ourselves. Growth at its core is about love, not perfection, and when we choose to love ourselves, we unlock the potential for transformation that can change our lives. Comparison steals joy and clarity. In a world that constantly encourages us to measure our success, appearance, and accomplishments against others, it's easy to fall into the trap of comparison. Whether it's through social media, conversations with friends, or even within our own families, we are often led to believe that our worth is determined by how we stack up against those around us. Yet, comparison rarely brings us anything of value. Instead, it robs us of our ability to appreciate our own unique journey and find clarity in who we are and what we truly want. When we compare ourselves to others, we are often looking at their highlight reels, their successes, their moments of triumph, without seeing the struggles, failures, or sacrifices behind the scenes. This distorted view of reality creates a false sense of what is normal or ideal, and it leads to dissatisfaction. We think, if only I had their life, their body, their success, without considering that we are each on our own distinct path with our own strengths, challenges, and pace. What comparison fails to acknowledge is that we each have a unique set of circumstances, and what works for someone else might not be right for us. This constant comparison steals our joy by planting seeds of inadequacy and self-doubt. When we look at others and think we don't measure up, we diminish our own accomplishments, often overlooking our strengths and the progress we've made. Instead of celebrating what we've achieved, we focus on what we haven't. The joy that should come from personal growth, success, or happiness is overshadowed by the belief that it's not enough because it's not like someone else's experience. We lose sight of the richness of our own lives, constantly chasing after someone else's version of success or happiness. This is where joy begins to fade, as we start to believe that we are not worthy or deserving of the same things that others have. One of the most damaging aspects of comparison is how it distorts our perception of success. Success is a deeply personal thing, and it cannot be measured by the achievements or lifestyle of someone else. Yet when we compare, we tend to make someone else's success the standard to which we hold ourselves. We look at their career, relationships, or material wealth and feel as though we are falling short. But success is subjective, and it looks different for each person. What brings fulfillment to one individual may not be the same for another. The more we compare ourselves to others, the more we lose our own sense of what success truly means to us. Our clarity about our own goals, desires, and values becomes clouded by the expectations or accomplishments of others. Comparison also steals clarity by creating confusion about who we are and what we want. When we are constantly measuring ourselves against others, we lose sight of our own needs, desires, and values. We become distracted by what we believe we should be doing or achieving based on someone else's life. This external focus shifts our attention away from our internal truth. We begin to doubt our own instincts and start questioning whether we are on the right path. Are we doing enough? Are we good enough? Are we missing something? These questions arise from comparison, and they pull us further away from the clarity we need to move forward with confidence and purpose. The more we compare, the more we are likely to adopt someone else's goals and dreams as our own, often without realizing it. This happens because we start to believe that what others have is what we should have. We may start to pursue goals that are not aligned with our true desires, but are instead a reflection of someone else's success. This lack of clarity can lead to burnout, frustration, and a sense of being lost because we are pursuing a path that was never truly meant for us. When we stop comparing ourselves to others, we begin to hear our own voice more clearly, and we can reconnect with our authentic desires and purpose. Furthermore, comparison often causes us to feel inadequate or inferior, leading to a lack of self-confidence. When we measure ourselves against others, we may see all of our perceived shortcomings and flaws, amplifying the belief that we are not enough. This negative self-talk becomes a cycle that chips away at our self-worth. Over time, this mindset can affect every aspect of our lives, from our career to our relationships, making us feel as though we are always falling short of what others have achieved. This self-criticism stifles growth and personal development because it's difficult to move forward when you're constantly putting yourself down. On the flip side, comparison can also create a false sense of superiority. We may look at someone else and feel better about ourselves because we believe we are doing better or have more than they do. This, however, is just as damaging because it prevents us from seeing the full picture. Everyone has their own struggles, challenges, and triumphs. And just because someone's situation appears less favorable doesn't mean they don't have their own journey of growth and development. Focusing on the perceived weaknesses of others not only steals our joy, but also prevents us from developing empathy and compassion. In contrast, embracing our uniqueness and our individual path to growth allows us to experience life more fully. When we stop comparing, we give ourselves permission to be ourselves, with all our strengths, weaknesses, quirks, and imperfections. We allow ourselves to enjoy our progress without measuring it against anyone else's. By focusing on our own journey, we can cultivate a sense of joy and fulfillment that is rooted in the present moment, not in a future where we've achieved someone else's definition of success. Clarity, too, returns when we stop comparing. We start to listen to our own desires and tune into our own needs. We realize that our life, our pace, and our path are not inferior to anyone else's, and that we are exactly where we need to be. Instead of seeking validation from others or trying to measure up, we can simply be. When we stop comparing, we make space for our own growth and our own vision of success. Ultimately, comparison steals joy and clarity by distracting us from the present moment and clouding our understanding of what truly matters. It leads us to forget that our journey is unique and that our value is not determined by how we measure up to others. When we let go of comparison and embrace our individual path, we free ourselves from the chains of self-doubt and insecurity. We regain our ability to enjoy the journey and see clearly the steps we need to take toward becoming the best version of ourselves. Courage starts with compassion for yourself. It is easy to think of courage as a dramatic, bold act, standing up in front of a crowd, taking risks, or facing down fears. While these moments certainly require courage, the foundation for all true courage lies in something far quieter but infinitely more powerful: self-compassion. True courage is not about being fearless or immune to doubt. It's about facing those fears with kindness toward oneself. It's about showing up for yourself, even when the path is uncertain, and trusting that you are worthy of the effort and love it takes to keep moving forward. Self-compassion is the ability to treat yourself with the same kindness, understanding, and patience that you would offer to a close friend who is struggling. It involves recognizing that you are human, that mistakes and failures are part of the process, and that you don't need to be perfect in order to be worthy of love and respect. When you can cultivate this kind of compassion for yourself, you create a safe inner environment where courage can take root. This is because you know deep down that even if things go wrong or you face setbacks, you will be okay. You will be able to bounce back, learn, and grow. It is this deep sense of self-assurance that fuels the courage to keep going. When we are compassionate with ourselves, we give ourselves permission to take risks and to step into the unknown. We stop holding ourselves back out of fear of judgment or failure because we have developed a trust in ourselves. This trust doesn't come from the absence of fear or doubt. Rather, it comes from the belief that we can handle whatever comes our way. We can fail, make mistakes, and still be worthy of love and acceptance. We are not defined by our failures, but by how we rise from them. This is the kind of courage that is sustained over time. It's not about having a single courageous moment, but about consistently showing up for yourself with grace, even when things are hard. The practice of self-compassion also helps to quiet the inner critic that often keeps us stuck in inaction. So many of us hold ourselves back because we fear judgment, either from others or from within. The voice inside our heads tells us we are not good enough, not strong enough, or not capable of handling what lies ahead. But when we offer ourselves compassion, we begin to notice this inner critic for what it is, a fear-based reaction, not the truth of who we are. Compassion allows us to separate ourselves from these negative thoughts so that we can view them objectively and respond to them with kindness rather than self-criticism. In this way, self-compassion becomes the antidote to the fear that holds us back from taking brave, bold steps. The courage to face challenges, whether they be internal or external, is built on a solid foundation of self-love and self-acceptance. Without compassion, we are likely to approach difficulties with shame, guilt, or self-judgment, which only makes the situation harder. When we are hard on ourselves, we reinforce the idea that we are not good enough, that we don't deserve success or happiness, and that we should be ashamed of our flaws. This mindset erodes our confidence and makes it difficult to move forward. But when we treat ourselves with compassion, we shift our mindset to one of growth and possibility. We realize that challenges are a part of life, not a reflection of our inadequacy. Compassion helps us accept where we are in the process, knowing that we are doing the best we can with what we have, and that is enough. Self-compassion also helps us stay motivated during difficult times. When life gets hard, it is easy to give up or to feel as though we're not capable of handling the obstacles in our way. But when we practice compassion, we develop resilience. We understand that setbacks are not the end of the road, but rather opportunities to learn, grow, and try again. Compassion teaches us to be gentle with ourselves during these moments and to recognize the effort we are putting in even if the results are not immediate. It's a recognition that courage isn't always about big, dramatic actions. Sometimes it's about continuing to move forward, even when the path is unclear, because you trust that you are capable. The key to building courage through self-compassion is recognizing that it is a process, not a destination. There will be moments when you doubt yourself, when the fear feels overwhelming, and when you wonder if you can really keep going. This is where self-compassion is crucial. Instead of judging yourself for feeling afraid or uncertain, you meet yourself with understanding. You acknowledge your fears, your vulnerabilities, and your imperfections, and you love yourself through them. This process doesn't make the fear go away, but it changes how you relate to it. Fear is no longer an enemy to be avoided, but a signal that you are pushing the edges of your comfort zone and growing. The courage to be vulnerable, to take risks, and to pursue your dreams requires an internal safety net, something that self-compassion provides. When you love and accept yourself, you are less likely to be paralyzed by the fear of judgment or failure. You know that no matter the outcome, you will be okay. This is the freedom that compassion provides. It allows you to act from a place of love rather than fear, from a place of trust in your own ability to navigate whatever comes your way. Finally, self-compassion fosters a deeper sense of connection with others. When we are compassionate with ourselves, we are more likely to extend that same compassion to others. This creates a ripple effect that strengthens our relationships and encourages others to be brave and authentic as well. Courage is not only about standing up for yourself, but also about standing up for others and showing up in ways that support their growth. Self-compassion helps us do this by fostering an attitude of empathy and understanding. We become better able to encourage, support, and care for those around us when we first offer that same care to ourselves. Courage begins with the simple yet powerful act of showing up for yourself with love and kindness. It is in the moments of vulnerability, self-doubt, and fear that self-compassion becomes the most powerful tool for growth. When we stop judging ourselves and start treating ourselves with the same gentleness and understanding that we would offer to a friend, we create the conditions for real courage to take root. With compassion as our foundation, we find the strength to face life's challenges, embrace uncertainty, and continue moving forward no matter what. Your relationship with yourself sets the tone for every other relationship. This is a profound truth that impacts every facet of our lives, often in ways we don't immediately realize. The way we treat ourselves, the way we speak to ourselves, and the way we care for ourselves influences how we interact with the world around us. Whether in friendships, family relationships, romantic partnerships, or professional connections, the foundation of those relationships is built upon how we view and treat ourselves. If we are kind to ourselves, compassionate, and self-respecting, we create space for healthy, fulfilling relationships with others. If we are self-critical, dismissive, or neglectful of our own needs, it becomes more difficult to form deep, authentic connection. The relationship we have with ourselves is the blueprint for how we interact with others. When we treat ourselves with love and respect, we are more likely to extend that same treatment to those around us. Conversely, if we struggle with self-acceptance or harbor negative beliefs about ourselves, we may inadvertently project those feelings onto others. Our internal narrative colors the way we engage with people. If we feel unworthy or not good enough, we may seek validation from others or tolerate mistreatment. If we are comfortable in our own skin, however, we are more likely to enter into relationships from a place of confidence and self-assurance, which sets the stage for healthier and more equal connections. A critical aspect of the relationship we have with ourselves is how we handle our emotions. When we practice emotional self-awareness and regulation, we are better equipped to manage our reactions in relationships. This doesn't mean suppressing our emotions or pretending everything is okay when it's not, but it does mean recognizing and owning our feelings without letting them dictate our behavior in unhealthy ways. If we have a strong relationship with ourselves, we are more likely to approach difficult situations with calmness, empathy, and clarity, which allows us to communicate more effectively with others. On the other hand, if we have unresolved emotional issues, or if we don't take the time to understand ourselves, we might struggle to communicate our needs or set healthy boundaries. This can lead to misunderstandings, unmet needs, and frustration in relationships. When we lack self-awareness or self-respect, we may settle for relationships that don't serve us or allow ourselves to be treated in ways that don't honor our worth. Our internal sense of value directly influences what we accept from others. Another critical element of how our relationship with ourselves influences our interactions with others is in the realm of boundaries. Having a healthy relationship with yourself means knowing when to say yes and when to say no, and being able to communicate those needs clearly. It also means knowing your limits and having the courage to protect your time, energy, and emotional well-being. Quote, "If you have a strong sense of self-worth, you are more likely to set boundaries that reflect your values and needs. This sets the tone for how others treat you, as they will recognize that you respect yourself and expect the same from them. When we don't respect our own boundaries, we may find ourselves overwhelmed, resentful, or burnt out, which can damage relationships." In romantic relationships, the way we relate to ourselves is perhaps even more critical. Our sense of self-worth influences how we approach love and intimacy. If we struggle with self-love or believe that we need someone else to complete us, we may enter relationships with unrealistic expectations or a sense of dependence. We may look for validation from others or try to mold ourselves to fit someone else's needs, often at the expense of our own. On the other hand, when we have a healthy relationship with ourselves, we enter relationships with a sense of wholeness, knowing that we are already complete. We are less likely to settle for unhealthy dynamics or to lose ourselves in the process of loving someone else. We enter relationships as equals with the intention of sharing love rather than seeking it as a means of filling an inner void. A strong relationship with yourself also fosters resilience in times of conflict or difficulty in relationships. Every relationship has challenges, whether it's a misunderstanding with a friend, a disagreement with a partner, or a difficult conversation with a colleague. If we are comfortable with ourselves and have a solid sense of self-worth, we are more likely to handle these challenges with grace and understanding. Don't take things personally, because we know our value isn't dependent on someone else's opinion or behavior. This ability to detach from emotional reactions and maintain a balanced perspective allows us to work through conflicts without allowing them to destroy the relationship. Moreover, when we have a positive relationship with ourselves, we are more likely to attract others who treat us with kindness, respect, and love. People often mirror the way we treat ourselves, and when we show up as whole, authentic individuals, we invite others to do the same. Healthy self-esteem acts like a magnet for positive, supportive relationships. People who recognize their own worth and treat themselves with care are more likely to build connections with others who do the same. In this way, the relationship we have with ourselves sets the stage for the kind of people we attract and the quality of the relationships we form. Self-compassion is also an essential part of this equation. The way we treat ourselves during times of struggle or failure profoundly affects how we interact with others. If we are kind and forgiving toward ourselves when we make mistakes, we are more likely to extend that same grace to others. We understand that everyone is on their own journey and that mistakes don't define us. Similarly, when we practice self-compassion, we are less likely to project unrealistic expectations onto others. We recognize that they too are human, and we can offer them the understanding and empathy that we give ourselves. Lastly, having a good relationship with yourself helps you become more secure in your identity. When you are comfortable with who you are and have a clear sense of your values, goals, and passions, you are less likely to compromise your authenticity in relationships. You will be able to show up fully without pretending to be someone you're not or hiding parts of yourself to gain approval. This authenticity strengthens your relationships because it fosters trust, transparency, and deeper connection. Ultimately, the relationship you have with yourself sets the tone for every other relationship because it dictates how you show up in the world. If you nurture a relationship with yourself based on love, respect, and understanding, you create a solid foundation for all your interactions. The way you treat yourself teaches others how to treat you. And it allows you to build relationships that are genuine, fulfilling, and supportive. The key to building strong relationships lies not in seeking approval or validation from others, but in cultivating a healthy relationship with yourself first. When you love, respect, and honor yourself, you create the conditions for every other relationship in your life to thrive.